At exactly 12:14 in the afternoon, with the front door still open behind her and the smell of sun-warmed pavement clinging to her uniform, Serena Brooks stepped into her living room and found her husband standing in the middle of it like a man waiting to bury a body, except the only thing in his hands was a stack of divorce papers, and the only thing he had come to kill was the life they had built together. Outside, the neighborhood looked ordinary enough to make the scene feel unreal. The trimmed hedges glowed under the noon light, a lawnmower hummed 2 houses away, and somewhere down the block a child laughed so freely that it sounded almost disrespectful against the tension gathering inside Serena's chest. She stood just inside the doorway, wearing her navy work shirt, tan pants, and black shoes, the same plain uniform she wore every weekday to the dental supply warehouse across town, a job her husband had once promised was only temporary while they got on their feet and built something better together. Her bag hung from her shoulder, heavy with receipts, a half-eaten granola bar, 2 pens, and 1 folded lottery slip she had not yet checked carefully because the woman at the convenience store had been shouting so loudly after the numbers were posted that Serena thought it had to be some mistake. But that was 10 minutes earlier, and this was now. And right now, all she could see was her husband, Marcus Brooks, standing near the coffee table with his jaw tight, his sweater sleeves rolled halfway up his forearms, his expression cold in that rehearsed way people get when they have practiced cruelty before the audience arrives. He did not say hello. He did not ask how work was. He did not even pretend to be conflicted. He simply lifted the papers a little higher and said, "You need to sign these now." Serena blinked once because the sentence itself sounded too clean, too prepared, too unnatural to belong inside a home where she had cooked, cleaned, prayed, cried, and loved for 4 years. The front door remained open behind her, and a thin stripe of sunlight spilled across the hardwood floor between them, like a line somebody dared one of them to cross. "What?" she asked, though she had heard him perfectly. Marcus took a step forward and extended the papers farther toward her. "Divorce papers," he said, as casually as if he were handing her a utility bill. "I already had them drawn up. You just need to sign." The words struck her one by one, not like a punch, but like stones dropped into a still pond, each one widening the damage. Serena slowly let her bag slide from her shoulder into the crook of her elbow, her eyes never leaving his face. At 32, Marcus was a handsome man in the kind of polished, disciplined way that made people trust him too quickly. He had the face of someone who looked successful in church clothes, business casual, or grief, and when she met him 5 years ago, that face had made her feel safe. Now it looked like a locked door. "Marcus," she said, her voice lower than she intended, "what are you talking about?" He exhaled through his nose in irritation, as if clarity were the one thing making this harder than necessary. "I'm talking about us being done," he said. "I'm talking about me being tired. I'm talking about not wasting more years pretending this marriage still works." Serena stared at him, trying to match this version of her husband to the man who used to rub her swollen feet after double shifts, the man who used to kiss her forehead and call her his piece, the man who once told her they did not need much money because as long as they had each other, they were already rich. That man felt very far away now. Her fingers tightened slightly around the handle of her bag. "And you waited until I got home from work to do this?" she asked. "No," Marcus said. "I waited until I knew you'd finally be here and couldn't dodge the conversation." The sentence settled in the room with an ugliness that made even the walls feel embarrassed. Serena closed the front door behind her with her heel, not because she wanted privacy for him, but because she suddenly could not bear the thought of this humiliation drifting out into the bright afternoon air where strangers could breathe it in. The click of the door sounded final, and Marcus seemed encouraged by it. He placed the documents flat on the coffee table, then tapped the top page with 2 fingers. "It's all straightforward. No drama, no mess, no fighting. The house is in my name, the car is in my name, and you don't have enough saved to drag this out anyway. So sign, and let's do this like adults." Serena felt something cold move through her body.
Not panic, not yet, more like the first shadow of betrayal becoming visible enough to outline itself. "The house is in your name because your credit was better when we bought it," she said quietly. "The down payment came from both of us." Marcus gave a short laugh that held no amusement at all. "That was 4 years ago, and since then, I've been carrying most of this marriage." She almost asked him if he had lost his mind, but the truth was, she did not want his mind. She wanted his honesty, and for the first time, she suspected she had it. Serena set her bag down gently on the small table by the door, and as it tipped slightly, the folded lottery ticket shifted inside the outer pocket, just visible enough to catch a streak of light before falling back into shadow. Neither of them noticed. "What happened?" she asked. Marcus looked at her as if that question annoyed him more than the divorce itself. "What happened," he repeated, "is I got tired of carrying somebody who never moves." Serena stared at him in disbelief. "I work every day." "You work a job," he snapped. "That's not the same thing as building a life." The cruelty of that sentence was so sharp it almost sounded borrowed, like something another man had said and Marcus had admired enough to keep. Serena took a slow breath. She had learned long ago that some arguments become uglier the moment you match the other person's temperature, so she kept her voice level. "I leave this house before 8 every morning. I pay bills here. I buy groceries here. I keep this place together while you sit around talking about the promotion you still don't have." His face changed instantly. That hit where she knew it would. Marcus worked as a regional sales manager for an office furniture company, and for the last year he had talked about one thing with relentless, exhausting obsession, the executive promotion he believed he deserved. He dressed for it, spoke for it, hinted about it, prayed for it, and came home from work every other Friday furious that somebody else still had more authority than he did. He was the kind of man who mistook delayed praise for sabotage. "And that," he said, pointing at her, "is exactly why I'm done. That mouth, that attitude, that constant little dig every time something in my life doesn't move fast enough for you." Serena let the accusation sit there between them, not because it was true, but because it told her something. This was not sudden. This had been growing in him for a while, maybe in silence, maybe in resentment, maybe in the quiet, ugly places where weak men go when they start blaming the nearest woman for the life they expected to have by now. "You already decided all this before I walked in," she said. Marcus crossed his arms. "Yes."
The honesty of it hurt more than any performance would have. Serena looked around the room they had furnished together. The couch she found second-hand and reupholstered herself. The cheap framed prints she made look tasteful. The rug she saved for over 3 months to buy. Emotionally, legally, financially, what am I signing away? He looked irritated again, then snatched the top page and skimmed it theatrically as if she were wasting time. "You waive any claim to spousal support. You acknowledge we're separating voluntarily. You keep your personal belongings. I keep the house. We split what's left in the joint account after bills clear." Serena's eyebrows lifted. "What's left?" she repeated. "Don't start." She almost laughed then, not because anything was funny, but because the arrogance of him using that tone when he was the one handing his wife divorce papers at noon felt absurd enough to be scripted. "You emptied the joint account?" she asked. Marcus did not answer immediately, which was answer enough. Her eyes widened. "You emptied it?" "I moved what I needed to move. That was our money. It was my protection." Serena stared at him in open disgust now. The man standing in front of her was not just ending a marriage, he was stripping it for parts. For a second, the room went so quiet that she could hear the faint ticking of the wall clock in the kitchen and the wind pushing lightly against the side of the house. Then Marcus did something that made her stomach drop. He softened his voice, not with love, not with regret, but with that fake calm people use when they want to seem reasonable after showing their teeth. "Serena,"
he said. "Just sign. You don't want this to get uglier than it has to." There it was. The threat, polished and ironed flat so it could pretend to be advice. She folded her arms slowly and leaned one shoulder against the wall near the door, not out of comfort, but because her legs suddenly did not trust the floor. "And if I don't?" she asked. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. "Then I file anyway," he said, "and I make sure the process reflects reality." "What reality is that?" "That I've been carrying a dead marriage and a woman with no direction." Serena let out one short breath through her nose. There was a version of herself, younger and more desperate to be understood, who would have crumbled right there and begged him to explain how he could say such things after everything. But something in her had hardened over the years, not into bitterness, but into dignity. And dignity has a strange habit of getting quieter when it is wounded. She walked toward the couch, sat down slowly, and held out her hand. "Let me see them." Marcus handed them to her with the satisfaction of a man who believed this was progress. She read the first page, then the second, then the third. Her face remained composed, but inside her a slow rage was beginning to uncurl. Not because the marriage was ending, not even because he had clearly prepared to protect himself at her expense, but because the man had looked her in the eye after 4 years of vows and work and loyalty and decided she was easiest to destroy when she came home tired. That took calculation. That took cowardice. She looked up from the papers. "You really thought this through?" Marcus nodded. "I did." "While I was at work?" "Yes." "While I was unloading boxes in a warehouse and eating crackers for lunch because I skipped breakfast?" He shifted uncomfortably, just for a second. "You're being dramatic." "No," she said, very softly. "I'm being accurate." He looked away first, and that told her something too. For all his cruelty, some part of him still knew what he was doing. He just wanted it badly enough to continue. Serena lowered the papers onto her lap. "What changed?" she asked. "And this time, don't talk to me about ambition or energy or dead weight. Tell me what changed." Marcus walked to the window, looked out into the bright afternoon, and said it without turning around. "I met someone." The sentence hit clean and cold. Serena did not gasp, did not shout, did not throw anything. She simply looked at the back of his head and felt the last soft thing in her chest become something else. "Who?" He turned halfway. "That doesn't matter. It matters to me." He hesitated, then shrugged. "Her name is Rochelle." A real woman. A face. A body. A witness to his betrayal. Maybe a participant in it. Maybe the reason the softness in him died faster than it should have. "How long?" His jaw tightened. "Long enough for me to understand what I need." Serena almost said, "Then why didn't you leave before emptying the joint account and pushing papers in my face the second I got home?" Instead, she asked the only question that mattered to her pride. "Does she know you were waiting in the house with divorce papers while your wife was still at work?" He looked embarrassed for the first time. That pleased her more than it should have. "She knows I'm ending things," he said. "Ah," Serena said quietly. "So she knows you're brave once the woman you betray is already standing in front of you." Marcus's expression hardened again. "This is why I'm done. Every conversation with you turns into this." "No," Serena said. "Every conversation with me turns into truth eventually. You just hate the timing." He stepped away from the window. "Sign the papers." She looked back down at them, her fingers resting on the final page where her signature was meant to go. And right then, as if the universe itself had been waiting for the exact right second to breathe into the room, her bag vibrated sharply on the table by the door. Once, then again, Then again. Marcus glanced toward it, annoyed. "Aren't you going to get that?" Serena did not move immediately. Somewhere deep inside her, a strange instinct rose, small but insistent, like a match lighting in a dark room. She stood, crossed to the bag, and pulled out her phone. Unknown number. For a second, she almost ignored it. Then she answered. "Hello?" A bright, almost breathless female voice came through the speaker. "May I please speak with Serena Brooks?" "This is she." "Ms. Brooks, this is Tamika Lawson from the State Lottery Claim Verification Office. First, I need to confirm that you are in a private and safe place before I continue." Serena's heart did something suddenly and violently inside her chest. Marcus frowned from across the room. She turned slightly away from him. "Yes," she said carefully, "I'm in my home." "Wonderful. Ms. Brooks, after reviewing the numbers and the security code associated with the ticket purchased today at Mason's Quick Stop on Pine Street, we need to inform you that you are the verified holder of the winning ticket for the $50 million Gold State jackpot." For one impossible second, the room seemed to tilt, not metaphorically, physically, like the walls had inhaled and forgotten how to let the air go. Serena said nothing. Marcus was staring at her now, trying to read her face. The voice on the phone continued gently, professionally, each word turning her life into a different shape. "I understand this may be overwhelming, so I'm going to walk you through the next steps slowly. We strongly recommend that you do not announce this publicly yet. We also recommend immediate legal and financial consultation before any claim press conference. If you are available, we can schedule a secure verification appointment this afternoon." Serena's fingers tightened around the phone. Inside her head, images flashed too quickly to hold. The ticket in her bag, the woman in the convenience store screaming, Marcus standing in the living room with divorce papers, the joint account emptied, the house, the papers, the humiliation, the timing. The voice asked, "Ms. Brooks, are you still with me?" "Yes," she whispered. Marcus took a step closer. "What is it?" She did not answer him. The lottery representative continued gently, professionally, each word turning her life into a different shape. "Do you have the ticket physically in your possession?" "Yes." "Excellent. Do not lose it. Keep it secure. I'm going to text and email you official instructions in the next 60 seconds. You should also know that depending on the payout election, taxes, and legal structuring, your advisory team may recommend several options for protecting the funds." Funds. Such a small word for something that suddenly felt like thunder. Serena closed her eyes for half a second.
All morning she had been one tired warehouse worker with sore feet and a lukewarm lunch. Now she was standing in her own living room holding a phone that had just told her she was richer than every insult Marcus had prepared for her. She opened her eyes and looked straight at him. He was watching her face now with irritation turning quickly into suspicion. "What happened?" he asked. Serena listened as the representative confirmed the appointment details and repeated the warning about discretion. She thanked her, ended the call, and slipped the phone back into her bag with hands that were somehow perfectly steady again. Marcus stepped forward. "What happened?" Serena looked at the divorce papers still resting on the couch, then at her husband, then at the life that had just cracked open in both directions at once. And when she finally spoke, her voice was the calmest it had been all afternoon. "You said you wanted to do this like adults," she said. Marcus frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," Serena replied, lifting the papers and setting them neatly back on the coffee table, "you should probably sit down before we continue." Marcus did not sit down immediately, because men like him only understand danger when it arrives wearing a voice louder than theirs, and Serena's calm was too unfamiliar to frighten him properly at first. He remained standing beside the coffee table, one hand resting on the stack of divorce papers, as if paper could still give him control, while the noon light shifted slightly across the hardwood floor and turned the room golden in a way that felt almost mocking. Serena set her bag down with deliberate care, then opened the outer pocket and took out the folded lottery ticket. She did not wave it dramatically. She did not smile. She simply held it between two fingers and looked at it for a moment, as if it belonged to another woman's life and had accidentally landed in hers. Marcus watched her with growing impatience. "What is that?" he asked. Serena looked up at him. "It is the reason you should sit down." He let out a short laugh that held more annoyance than amusement. "I'm not in the mood for games." "Neither am I," she said. And because something in her tone finally cut through his confidence, Marcus pulled out the armchair by the window and lowered himself into it with visible reluctance, his posture still stiff with superiority, even as the first cracks began to form beneath it. Serena remained standing. The ticket trembled once in her hand, not from fear, but from the aftershock of what she had just heard over the phone. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Outside, a car rolled slowly down the street, its tires whispering over the asphalt, and somewhere nearby a dog barked twice before falling silent. Everything ordinary kept happening. That was the strangest part. The world had just tipped sideways, and yet the neighborhood remained committed to being Tuesday. Marcus rubbed one hand over his jaw. "Well?" Serena drew in a breath and let it out slowly. 10 minutes before I came home," she said, "I stopped at Mason's Quick Stop." He frowned, already impatient with what he believed was irrelevant detail. And I checked the lottery slip I bought this morning." His expression changed only slightly, the way people's faces shift when they are listening but still arranging themselves to mock what comes next. Serena continued. "When I walked in, the woman behind the counter started screaming before I even got all the way to the machine. I thought she was overreacting. I thought maybe I matched a couple numbers and she was trying to be funny." Marcus stared at her. Serena held up the ticket. She wasn't overreacting. Silence. Then, because he still did not understand how language could be a weapon against him yet, Marcus said the stupidest possible thing. "How much?" Not, "What happened?" Not, "Are you serious?" Not, "Why didn't you say that first?" How much? Serena almost laughed then, but the sound died before it could escape her. $50 million, she said. The room went still in a way that felt unnatural, like even the dust motes in the sun had paused to listen. Marcus did not blink for a second, maybe two. Then he laughed. Not with joy, not with disbelief exactly, but with the desperate, brittle sound of a man whose reality had just been challenged and who did not yet know whether to deny it or to kneel to it. 50 million. Yes. He leaned forward in the chair, elbows on knees. From a lottery ticket? Yes. He looked at the slip in her hand, then back at her face, trying to catch a flicker of sarcasm, hysteria, anything that would make this manageable. "You're serious." Serena said nothing. She simply walked to the table, picked up her phone again, opened the text message the lottery office had sent her, and extended the screen toward him. Marcus took the phone. His eyes scanned the message once, then again. Official claim verification language, appointment time, security instructions, a direct callback number, state seal in the email header. His face lost color so gradually it might have been invisible to anyone who did not know him. Serena knew him. She had known every version of his face for 5 years. The confident one, the soft one, the jealous one, the self-pitying one, the one he used on church elders, the one he used with managers, the one he used when he wanted something and pretended he did not. And now she was learning a new one. The face of a man doing math too quickly for shame to keep up with. Marcus lowered the phone. 50 million, he repeated again. But this time the number sounded different in his mouth, more like a prayer he hadn't earned. Serena took the phone back and placed it in her bag. Yes. The divorce papers sat between them now like a bad punchline. Marcus looked at them, then at her, then at the ticket, then back at the papers. Something in his body shifted.
Not remorse, not yet. Instinct. Predatory, familiar, ugly instinct. He stood up so quickly the chair legs scraped against the wood. Well, he forced an awkward smile that made Serena's stomach turn. There it was. Not, "How are you feeling?" Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "God, Serena." That changes things. Serena folded the ticket and slid it back into her bag. Does it? Marcus blinked, still trying to reassemble himself into the version of the husband that would now benefit most from her luck. Of course it does, he said. Why wouldn't it? He tried a laugh, softer this time, almost intimate. Baby, look, maybe this whole thing got dramatic too fast. Serena stared at him. The speed of it, the nakedness of it, the way betrayal had not even finished cooling before greed stepped in and asked for a plate. He moved closer now, careful, his whole body adjusting into appeasement. We both said things, he said. Maybe I came on too hard. Maybe I've been under more pressure than I realized. You know how stressful things have been at work. Serena did not answer. Marcus took another step. And with this, he said, gesturing vaguely towards her bag as if he didn't want to sound too eager while sounding exactly that. Everything changes. We can reset. We can breathe. We can actually figure out our future without all this tension hanging over us. Serena tilted her head slowly. Our future? Yes, he said quickly, seizing the word. Us, together. This could be the blessing we needed. She looked at the divorce papers. The blessing we needed. The sentence was so shameless it almost deserved applause. 10 minutes ago, he had emptied our joint account, handed her legal papers, and told her she had nothing to offer this world. Now her luck had entered the room, and suddenly he was speaking in plural again. Serena walked to the kitchen doorway, needing a little distance from the smell of his panic. She turned and leaned one shoulder against the frame. You already made your decision. He shook his head too fast. No, I made a decision based on where we were. And where were we? He spread his hands like the answer was obvious. Struggling, Serena. Angry. Stuck. But this changes the whole landscape. She almost smiled. Not because he was clever, because he was transparent. He had not even chosen love as his language. He had chosen opportunity. That's a beautiful phrase, she said quietly. Changes the whole landscape. Marcus mistook the softness in her voice for movement. He came a little closer. Look, he said, lowering his tone the way he used to when he wanted her to melt instead of think. Maybe this happened for a reason. Serena stared at him. 5 years of marriage, and this man still believed her gentleness meant she had no memory. He was talking to her like she had not just walked into the house and found him holding divorce papers like a waiter holding the bill. Did you mean it, any of it, before the phone rang? He hesitated. Just once, but that was enough. Serena, don't do that. Did you mean it? His eyes moved away from hers. That's not fair. A quiet laugh escaped her then, involuntary and cold. Not fair. She repeated it like she was testing the shape of absurdity. You emptied our joint account, handed me legal papers in the living room at noon, told me I had nothing to offer this world, and now you're worried about fair. Marcus's voice sharpened slightly. I was angry, and now you're hopeful. That doesn't mean I didn't mean what I said in the moment. She nodded slowly. No, she said, it means you meant it until it got expensive. The sentence landed. He hated that. She could always tell the truth in ways that left no room for him to hide behind volume.
Marcus ran both hands over his head and started pacing. This is crazy, he muttered. This whole thing is crazy. Serena watched him move. She knew that pacing. It was the pacing of a man whose plan had been interrupted by a reality that refused to cooperate. What about Rochelle? She asked. He stopped walking. What about her? You said you met someone. You said you knew what you needed. Marcus's mouth tightened. That's separate. Serena's eyebrows lifted. Is it? He exhaled impatiently. Don't make this into something bigger than it is." She looked at him for 3 long seconds. Then she said, "You brought another woman into the collapse of this marriage before the papers were even signed, and you want me to believe that's not bigger than it is?" He did not answer, because there was no answer that made him look like what he was trying so hard to become again, a husband worth keeping. The clock in the kitchen ticked loudly now. Time had become a third person in the room, quietly taking sides. Marcus finally stepped toward the coffee table, picked up the divorce documents, and held them awkwardly. "Maybe we should tear these up." The sentence made Serena close her eyes for half a second, not because it was painful, because it was insulting. He still thought the paper was the injury. He still thought the problem was the legal act and not the soul underneath it. When she looked at him again, something in her had settled. Not just anger, decision. "No," she said. Marcus frowned. "No?" "No," she repeated. "Do not tear them up." His face tightened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, leave them." He stared at her as if his mind had tripped. "Serena!" "You wanted me to sign them like an adult," she said, "and maybe that part was the first honest thing you said all day." His tone changed then, sharpened by fear. "You're not serious." She looked at him almost gently. "I wasn't serious when I still believed I was standing in a marriage." He shook his head. "This is because of the money." "No," she said. "This is because of the timing." He laughed once, bitter and disbelieving. "That doesn't even make sense." "It makes perfect sense," she replied. "If you had left me poor, I would have remembered the truth. If I leave you rich, you will spend the rest of your life wondering what that money could have made possible. But either way, Marcus, you revealed yourself before either of us knew what I had in my bag." He went quiet after that, really quiet, because for the first time since she walked in the door, he understood the shape of the danger. It was not that Serena had $50 million. It was that she had it before he had the chance to pretend he loved her anyway. He sat down again slowly, the fight draining from him in visible stages. "Come on," he said, softer now, and the softness was worse than the cruelty because it was purchased. Serena almost smiled again. There was no us in the house until the jackpot arrived. She walked to the dining table, pulled out a chair, and sat across the room from him, putting deliberate distance between their futures. "I need you to listen carefully," she said. Marcus looked up. "I am listening. I am going to that appointment this afternoon. I am getting legal counsel before sunset. I am opening new accounts, freezing any shared exposure you still have access to, and hiring someone to tell me exactly what you moved out of our joint account and when." His eyes widened. "Serena!" "I'm not finished." He fell silent. She had never spoken to him like this before, and maybe that was part of the problem. He had confused her peace for surrender all these years. "You will not contact me about love, destiny, second chances, or blessings. You will contact me through a lawyer if you need something procedural. You will not ask me for money. You will not tell me we can work this out. You already worked it out. You worked it out right up until the second you thought I was still ordinary." He leaned forward now, his voice urgent. "Baby, please." The words sounded disgusting in his mouth. "No." His face crumpled into something halfway between anger and panic. "You're really going to throw away your marriage over one bad day?" Serena looked at him with the kind of clarity that makes lies feel childish. "No," she said. "You threw away your marriage over one ordinary day. The only difference is that ordinary day turned out to be worth $50 million. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked down, then up again, and when he spoke next, his voice was smaller than she had ever heard it. "What am I supposed to do now?" She looked at him and saw for the first time not a husband, not a partner,
not even an enemy, just a man who had mistaken convenience for love and now found himself alone in the consequences. "What you planned for me," she said. "Figure it out." The words stayed in the room long after she said them. Marcus's eyes burned with something wet and ashamed, but she did not let that move her. Regret after exposure is not repentance. It is a mirror. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from the lottery office, then another from an attorney referral service, then an email confirmation. The future was already moving. She stood. Marcus looked up quickly. "Where are you going?" She walked past him toward the hallway. "To shower, to change, to meet the people who just changed my life." He stood too, desperate again. "We need to talk more about this." She turned at the foot of the hallway and looked at him one last time before disappearing toward the bedroom they had shared until 40 minutes ago. "No," she said. "You needed to talk before the numbers hit." And then she left him standing in the living room with a stack of divorce papers and the exact life he had chosen, only now it was lit by the awful, beautiful knowledge of what he had thrown away. Marcus remained standing in the middle of the living room long after Serena disappeared down the hallway, and for the first time since she walked through the door, the house no longer felt like his territory, but like a courtroom where the verdict had already been delivered. The divorce papers were still in his hand, the same papers he had prepared so carefully that morning, the same papers he imagined would end his marriage neatly and quickly, the same papers he believed would free him from a woman he had convinced himself was holding him back. Now the weight of those pages felt completely different. He lowered himself slowly into the chair by the window, staring down at the signatures waiting at the bottom of the document. 40 minutes ago, those blank lines represented control. Now they represented the single worst miscalculation of his life. From the hallway, he could hear the faint sound of water starting in the bathroom. Serena was showering, getting ready, preparing to step into a life that did not include him anymore.
The thought landed slowly and painfully in his chest. Marcus rubbed his face with both hands. $50 million, he whispered to the empty room. The number sounded unreal even now. $50 million. The kind of money that turned problems into inconveniences. The kind of money that turned ordinary people into powerful ones. The kind of money that could have erased every argument they had ever had about bills, rent, promotions, and pressure. He looked toward the hallway again. She would have shared it, he muttered. And that was the worst part. Marcus knew Serena. He knew the way she gave money to her mother when she barely had any herself. He knew the way she bought groceries for her younger cousin during college. He knew the way she had quietly covered his car repair 2 years ago when he was embarrassed to ask for help. If the phone had rung before he handed her the divorce papers, Serena would have walked into that living room laughing, crying, shaking, and the first thing she would have done was grab him and say they did not have to struggle anymore. He knew it. And now that knowledge felt like a knife twisting slowly. The water in the bathroom shut off. Marcus straightened quickly, wiping his hands down his jeans as if preparing for another conversation. He heard the bedroom door open, a closet sliding, drawers moving. Serena was changing. Every sound carried a strange finality. After a few minutes, she walked back into the living room. Marcus almost did not recognize her, not because she looked different physically, but because something in her posture had shifted. She wore dark jeans and a simple black blouse now, her hair pulled neatly back, her face calm in the way people look when they have made a decision that cannot be negotiated. Her bag was over her shoulder again. Inside it rested the folded lottery ticket that had turned the world upside down. Marcus stood. "Serena." She stopped near the door, but did not step closer. "Yes?" His mouth opened, closed. For a moment, he looked like a man trying to translate his own thoughts into a language he had never practiced. "I made a mistake," he said finally. Serena nodded once. "Yes," she said. Marcus waited for something else. Forgiveness, encouragement, a softening. None came. He swallowed. "I was angry." "Yes?" "I wasn't thinking straight." "That seems accurate." Marcus took a few steps toward her. "Serena, please listen to me." She did not move. "I am listening." He spread his hands helplessly. "We've been under pressure for months. The bills, the job situation, everything. I felt like I was drowning and I blamed the wrong person." Serena watched him with an expression that was not cruel, but no longer protective either. "You blamed the person closest to you," she said. "Yes," while secretly moving money out of the joint account and preparing legal documents. Marcus flinched. "That was panic." "No," Serena replied. "That was planning." The sentence sat heavily between them. Marcus ran his fingers through his hair again. "I thought you were holding me back." "And now?" He laughed weakly. "Now I realize I was standing next to the only person who ever believed in me." Serena tilted her head slightly. "Belief is not enough to build a marriage," she said. Marcus's voice grew desperate. "Then what is?" "Respect." The word landed quietly, but completely. Marcus nodded slowly. "You're right." He stepped closer again. "Serena, we can fix this." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "Fix what?" "Us." She studied his face carefully. "You ended us 40 minutes ago." "That was before I knew." Serena's expression did not change. "That sentence is the reason we cannot fix it." Marcus blinked. "What?" "You did not change your mind because you remembered I loved you," she said calmly. "You changed your mind because you discovered I am suddenly valuable." Marcus opened his mouth to argue, then stopped, because the truth of that sentence was impossible to dodge. He looked down. "I do love you," he said quietly. Serena did not respond immediately. Instead, she walked to the table, picked up the divorce papers, and held them carefully between her hands. "These documents say something very clear," she said. Marcus watched her anxiously. "They say you wanted out before anything good happened to me." "Yes, but—" She raised one finger slightly. "Let me finish." He fell silent. Serena continued. "Life revealed two truths today. The first truth is that I won $50 million. Marcus nodded faintly. "And the second truth is that the man who promised to stand beside me when we had nothing decided to leave before he knew what I might become." Marcus's shoulders sagged. "I didn't know." "That's the point." The quiet certainty in her voice felt heavier than anger would have. Marcus took another step forward. "Serena, we can fix this." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "Fix what?" "Us." She studied his face carefully. "You ended us 40 minutes ago." "That was before I knew." Serena's expression did not change. "That sentence is the reason we cannot fix it." Marcus blinked. "What?" "You did not change your mind because you remembered I loved you," she said calmly. "You changed your mind because you discovered I am suddenly valuable." Marcus opened his mouth to argue, then stopped, because the truth of that sentence was impossible to dodge. He looked down. "I do love you," he said quietly. Serena did not respond immediately. Instead, she walked to the table, picked up the divorce papers, and held them carefully between her hands. "These documents say something very clear," she said. Marcus watched her anxiously. "They say you wanted out before anything good happened to me." "Yes, but—" She raised one finger slightly. "Let me finish." He fell silent. Serena continued. "Life revealed two truths today. The first truth is that I won $50 million. Marcus nodded faintly. And the second truth is that the man who promised to stand beside me when we had nothing decided to leave before he knew what I might become. Marcus's shoulders sagged. I didn't know. That's the point. The quiet certainty in her voice felt heavier than anger would have. Marcus took another step forward. Serena, we can fix this. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Fix what? Us. She studied his face carefully. You ended us 40 minutes ago. That was before I knew. Serena's expression did not change. That sentence is the reason we cannot fix it. Marcus blinked. What? You did not change your mind because you remembered I loved you, she said calmly. You changed your mind because you discovered I am suddenly valuable. Marcus opened his mouth to argue, then stopped, because the truth of that sentence was impossible to dodge. He looked down. I do love you, he said quietly. Serena did not respond immediately. Instead, she walked to the table, picked up the divorce papers, and held them carefully between her hands. These documents say something very clear, she said. Marcus watched her anxiously. They say you wanted out before anything good happened to me. Yes, but... She raised one finger slightly. Let me finish. He fell silent. Serena continued. Life revealed two truths today. The first truth is that I won $50 million. Marcus nodded faintly. And the second truth is that the man who promised to stand beside me when we had nothing decided to leave before he knew what I might become. Marcus's shoulders sagged. I didn't know. That's the point. The quiet certainty in her voice felt heavier than anger would have. Marcus took another step forward. Serena, we can fix this. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Fix what? Us. She studied his face carefully. You ended us 40 minutes ago. That was before I knew. Serena's expression did not change. That sentence is the reason we cannot fix it. Marcus blinked. What? You did not change your mind because you remembered I loved you, she said calmly. You changed your mind because you discovered I am suddenly valuable. Marcus opened his mouth to argue, then stopped, because the truth of that sentence was impossible to dodge. He looked down. I do love you, he said quietly. Serena did not respond immediately. Instead, she walked to the table, picked up the divorce papers, and held them carefully between her hands. These documents say something very clear, she said. Marcus watched her anxiously. They say you wanted out before anything good happened to me. Yes, but... She raised one finger slightly. Let me finish. He fell silent. Serena continued. Life revealed two truths today. The first truth is that I won $50 million. Marcus nodded faintly. And the second truth is that the man who promised to stand beside me when we had nothing decided to leave before he knew what I might become. Marcus's shoulders sagged. I didn't know. That's the point. The quiet certainty in her voice felt heavier than anger would have. Marcus took another step forward. We can start over. Serena shook her head gently. No. Why? Because starting over would mean pretending this never happened. He looked around the room helplessly. So what happens now? Serena placed the papers back on the coffee table. You wanted a clean ending, she said. Marcus's eyes followed the documents. Yes. She slid them toward him. You should still have it. His face tightened. You want the divorce. I want the truth of today to stay honest. Marcus rubbed his face again. Serena, please. She walked toward the door. I have an appointment. With the lottery office? Yes. He hesitated. And after that? A lawyer. Marcus nodded slowly. The word lawyer felt like the sound of a door locking somewhere deep inside the future. He looked at her one last time. Do you hate me? Serena paused at the door. She turned halfway back toward him. No, she said quietly. Marcus's eyes filled with fragile hope. Then she continued, but I no longer trust the version of you who claims to love me. The hope faded again. Serena reached for the door handle. Sunlight spilled across the threshold when she opened it. Outside, the afternoon remained bright and ordinary. Neighbors still watered plants. Cars still moved down the street. The world had no idea a marriage had just ended in this quiet suburban house. Marcus spoke once more before she stepped outside. If you had told me first, he said softly, everything would be different. Serena looked at him carefully. That is exactly why I'm leaving, she replied. He frowned. I don't understand. She gave him one final steady look. If the money had arrived before your decision, she said, I would have spent the rest of my life wondering if you stayed because you loved me or because you loved what came with me. Marcus's shoulders sank. And now? Now I know the truth. The words felt like closure. Serena stepped outside into the sunlight. The door closed gently behind her. Marcus remained in the living room, staring at the divorce papers on the coffee table and the empty space where his wife had been standing only minutes before. For a long time he did not move, because the house had never felt so quiet, and the silence carried one brutal certainty. He had been ready to walk away from his wife when she had nothing, and the moment he learned she had everything, she walked away from him.